The start, I guess, of history for Benin and Togo goes back a long time. The interest, probably the first start bit is that I think it was the kingdom of Dahomey or Abome, was one of those great African kingdoms that happened to be based in the region. It's more or less known, as far as I'm aware, as the kingdom that attacked all the other kingdoms and sold their prisoners of war as slaves. So there's some memorials in Benin where the ships were loaded up with slaves and headed off to the Western Hemisphere. And so because that was kind of the gathering point where everybody came in from, or where everybody left from, a lot of the slave cultures in the Western Hemisphere incorporated elements of the culture of Benin. Probably the biggest example of that has been Voodoo. Benin is culturally and ethnically the birthplace of Voodoo, which makes it a very interesting place to serve and to preach the gospel. There's still in the big cities it's not as much, but there's still a very large proportion of people that practice Voodoo, and it's not exactly what you see in the movies. There's obviously some differences, but culturally that's something that you just have to deal with every now and then. I would have an investigator and they'd admit that they worship Tron, the god of thunder. Oh, okay. Let's talk to you about this guy named Jesus Christ. So sometimes we were literally starting from ground zero in terms of their knowledge of Christianity. Later, the area it was a German colony for a very short time period, then a French colony, and that's why the working language is French, but there's still a lot of tribal languages. They are hard to learn. We tried a couple of times and they're hard. And then Benin became independent in the 1960s, and they've been trundling along ever since with various success rates. Supposedly while I was there, I lived through an attempted coup. We didn't notice anything other than more policemen out on the streets. There was some talk that it may have been a political ploy by the president himself. I'm not going to get into the politics, but officially, I've lived through a coup attempt. I don't know if that was ever on my bucket list, but it's now crossed off. But overall, both countries are still developing. Benin is more developed than Togo. Togo is very poor still. And I'm not familiar with too many of the details of Togo's history, just because I didn't serve very long there.